Greetings. Now, these are two volumes that we will talk about shortly from the 19th century, just to kind of illustrate. In more recent years, maybe the last 2 or 3 decades, you would have television shows, especially those that were particularly popular, and they would, after the seasons or sometime later on, they would be reissued on, say, season sets of DVDs. The idea being that now that everything's out, you can always go back and revisit things that you found entertaining. Well, obviously, if you're looking back in the 19th century, such things as DVDs and seasons and television shows are, obviously very much in the future. But people still took their entertainment in the form of very ephemeral forms of entertainment, which generally meant something you could read. It could have pictures, but mostly it's reading. So these two books reflect the sort of tendency that after you've been able to see the magazine, and the magazines you get, they're made on very cheap paper, and then you throw them away. And that's the idea, because who wants stacks of old magazines piling up everywhere except some very, very serious collector or pack rat. So what you have is bound volumes. Now, these are both pretty antique. We'll start with this one here because it's the older and more ancient. And you can still see some of the printing on the edge. It says Lady's Book. And down here, Volume 9. Now, this Lady's Book, well, actually, for a number of years, there was a Lady's Book. Let's see, maybe we'll find out a little bit more about it. A monthly magazine of Belles Lettres and the Arts, the Lady's Book, containing a choice and multifarious variety of original and selected literary compositions, embellished with several hundred different engravings. Well, remember, this is very old. Even photography is really not a thing to speak of, at least. Designed and executed by most eminent artists, with beautiful illustrations of the prevailing fashions, splendidly colored, and various patterns for ornamental embroidery. In addition to which, its contents embrace a number of the most popular melodies set to music and arranged for the pianoforte. Wow. Published by L.A. Godey's, No. 3 Franklin Place, Philadelphia. Agents are appointed in all parts of the United States. So this is very much an American thing. So let's take a look at this. How far back are we looking? Well, first of all, you have a little frontispiece showing the fashions of the time. Very slender waists and very wide, poofy dresses. Maybe there's hoops under there, I'm not sure. And extraordinarily elaborate hairdos, and oftentimes hats to go with it. Gloves. A lady was a very, very effeminate creature. This tissue paper has significantly yellowed, making it difficult to see. Now let's see when this actually appears. The Lady's Book, July 1834. July 1834. Andrew Jackson is President of the United States when these stories were published originally. So this is Philadelphia fashions for the month of July 1834. And as it goes on, there's some poetry from the time, and quite a whole host of different things. Julieta, tale of the 14th century. Oh, we got a little bit of history here, after all. We're not interested in modern times like the 1830s, are we? We want to know what's happening. Oh, here we go. Story of modern science. Let's see here. In the neighborhood of one of the largest provincial towns in England lives a small master manufacturer, a widower whose only child was his daughter Mary, the pride of her township, the delight of her father's heart, and the special delight of one other beside her father, as will appear in the due course of this history. So this is not about science. This is probably about this, maybe like a biographical story of a scientist and I guess his daughter. So it is, after all, a lady's book, so it's going to be that way. Byron's monument to his dog. Okay, Bloomington christening, noble sentiments, memoir of a gentleman who would not do for Galway. So, genius, a dead loss is, without dark brows and long proboscis. All right. Mineralogy. There seems to be a sprinkling of articles here about mineralogy. Earthy minerals. Well, I think most minerals they're acquainted with would be earthy. Acidiferous earthy minerals, alkaline salts, metals and their ores, inflammable minerals. Probably something on sulfur here, for example. And you just have to wonder what was known in those days. So, anyway, we keep going here. Forget Me Not. And you have a whole magazine. Recipes. The Church of the Petit Pears. One summer day in 1812, I was crossing with my husband the place de Victorias, adorned at that period with a colossal statue of Désiré. In spite of time, admiring the beauty of its expression and its nobleness of attitude, which seemed so well to express these memorable words, "Go and tell the first consul that I die with regret at not having done sufficient for my country and for posterity." Wow. So, at any rate, that's the July issue. Here's another engraving here. This time it is Isidore. So look at that. It all had to be done painstakingly as literally an engraving. All right. The smaller tissue paper, again, kind of thin and disintegrating. And now we start in the August 1834 edition of the lady's book, and so on. Indeed, we have 9 issues of the entire magazine. The Road of Simplon. Yeah, look at that. London and Parisian fashions once again. Okay. So, we continue on. Let's see here. It's July, August, September. Now here is a somewhat different etching or engraving. The Bower of Paphos. Wow. I mean, that's like a real work of art. Like I said, somebody had to painstakingly engrave that just to be able to print that into this book. All right, so, this is really kind of interesting. Here's another interesting old illustration. Entrance to the Peak Cavern, Derbyshire, England. Wow. That's really something to see. So, there's all kinds of different bits of interest. The toilet, by which they were talking about ways that you keep yourself clean and taken care of. So, at any rate, this continues all the way through to December of 1834. July through December of 1834. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of damage here. There we are, December of 1834. So, this has got to be of some interest. Now, much, much later in the 19th century, we are now looking at the Strand Magazine, Volume 5. So, these are of interest for another literary reason that may be well known to some. And that would be, so now you have the Strand Magazine. you do have photography, and they do have ways of making a sort of crude transfer of photographs to the... So that's actually based on a photograph, Queen Victoria's hands. And you still have diagrams and other things with just your normal engraving technology. But let's see what else we can find in here. Ooh, hold on. Here's some portraits of celebrities. And then, look at this. The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Adventure of the Cardboard Box. So there it is, with its original artwork. Look at that. Miss Cushing. Yeah. So, he examined them minutely, whatever they were. Oh, the ears. Yeah. How far to Wallington? So, it's really something here. Along with a lot of other different kinds of stories, accounts, articles, but mostly literary things. Playing cards that were peculiar for their day. Wow. Even then they had interesting pictures on some of their playing cards, apparently. So, that's all right, my lass, said I. He held out his hands quietly. So you can go through here and see all these ancient publications. See, now here's examples where, being the later part of the 19th century, photography does exist, and apparently also ways to take a photograph and incorporate it and mass print it into published. Miss Grimston's Boudoir. So, illustrated interviews. So, anyway, I just thought I'd feature a couple of these very old 19th century volumes. Perhaps if we continue going through all this carefully, we may find, yes, there it is, another adventure of Sherlock Holmes, The Adventure of the Yellow Face. Look at that. He held it up. Our visitor sprang from his chair. So there we go. Anyway, these are just a couple of interesting volumes. It is very difficult to find the individual magazines that have been gathered up and bound into these volumes. But the bound volumes are very common and, thankfully, extremely faithful reproductions of what actually had been appearing in the magazines, since they just recycled the same printing plates over again. All right, well, that's all I have for this.